Let's go to our reporter on the ground.
So, Debbie, today we are going to be talking about the T word again. Which T though?
There are so many T words making headlines. Which one do you want? I mean, obvious guess. First one, Trump.
That's it.
Back in the news. Yeah, I mean, did he ever leave the front page? Second one, tariffs.
Of course.
Also
yes.
Been around for a bit.
Check.
And the third one, trade wars.
Check. We're going to be talking about Trump, trade wars, and tariff. Hello, I am Kiran, and I am the host of Takaro Kids, and with me is
Debkanya, who is not as sing-songy as my co-host Kiran. Kiran, you're in a very good mood today. You're so excited about all the tariffs that have been put on India and all the other countries by the US.
Yeah, I mean, April 2nd was apparently called Liberation Day by Mr. Trump because he was liberating the US from the rest of the world and, everyone else taking the US for a ride.
Yeah, that's the big headline on today's episode that we're going to kind of decode and explain as best as we can. So bear with us. So what's basically happened is the President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, has announced, and he's been warning us and telling us about this for a while, and it's finally happened, has announced that there's going to be a bunch of tariffs on different countries when they sell their goods and products to the US. Okay, this is called exporting, right? So other countries, like for example, India, we export a lot of things to the US. And when we export these things to the US, we have to pay a tariff, which means we have to pay an extra tax on whatever we sell to the US, right? And that tariff varies from country to country. If you look at the news, in fact, you'll see there's a picture of Trump standing with this little blackboard kind of thing where he's listed out each country and what tariff each one is going to have to pay. And India has to pay 26%, right? Can you explain what 26% would be? What's a good way to explain that?
Well, so if you sell something for 100 rupees to the US, right? There is a tariff imposed on that. So you have to actually pay 26 rupees to the US government for that export. Right. So in a sense, what will happen is when I think about selling a product, let's take a pen that I'm going to sell for 100 rupees. And now suddenly Trump has said 26 of those rupees have to go to him and his administration and the US government. I don't have profits anymore. So what am I going to naturally do? I'm going to price my pen higher. I'm going to charge maybe 130 rupees for it so that those tariffs or that 26% that I have to now pay the US government, the consumer pays that amount. So in a sense, what tariffs actually will do more often than not is actually increase the price for each product that the US economy is going to buy, the US consumers are going to buy. And in fact, one of the big problems is the fact that, automotive. US is one of the largest automotive economies in the world. The most number of cars, the most number of vehicles, everything is sold in the US, right? And that's going to be pretty prohibitive because most of the automotive products in the US, the cars, have a huge amount of components coming from different parts of the world or is actually built in a different part of the world and brought to the US. So it depends on which country is exporting it to the US. The tariff will change. So it's going to be crazy. It's going to be really, really crazy for a while.
Yeah, and we've actually explained this in a lot of detail in one of our previous episodes. So do listen to that if you want to understand exactly what a tariff means and why Trump is so interested in putting all these tariffs on different countries and how it impacts their economy. We've covered all of that. In this episode, though, what we want to do is focus on India, right? What are these tariffs going to do to our economy? What does it mean for, Indian industries? For example, I just found out, did you know, Kiran, that India is one of the biggest exports from India to the US is jewelry and, precious stones?
Yeah. In fact, pearls, precious stones, and precious metals, they account for about $10.1 billion of exports every year to the US, right? That's a huge
Wow.
amount. And it's one of the largest. In fact, after that comes electronic equipment, which accounts to about $9.9 billion. And third is actually pharmaceutical products. So, medicines and things like that. So companies like Dr. Reddy's and Cipla and all of those guys who do a ton of exports to the US market, they account for about $7.5 billion every year. So these are large amounts, right, for Indian businesses. And there are some sectors or some industries that Trump has waived tariffs on. In fact, for example, the pharmaceutical sector has been exempted, right? Has been exempted from this reciprocal tariff. So which means, they can still
Wait.
continue to sell.
What is a reciprocal tariff, Kiran?
Oh, yes. Good
Because
question.
I've
We
heard
kind of bypassed that,
phrase,
no?
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
him using the phrase discounted reciprocal tariff. What does that mean?
Yeah. So with India, what happens is India basically charges any US company about 52% as a tariff for them to sell their products in India,
Right.
right? So a US
that's a
company
big
selling
number.
that pen. It is huge, right? So a US company is selling a pen, coming into India and selling it 52
More-
rupees out of every 100.
Let's be more specific. For example, US iPhone from the US being sold in India.
Yeah,
right?
if it's made in the US, but if it's made in
Yeah.
India now, because most iPhones are now made in India for the India market, then you bypass it, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole point. Each country wants companies to come in and set up their companies in that country and, create factories and create jobs in their country. So India has this whole Make in India program, right? So the reason Apple also started coming to India and many of the car manufacturers have come to India, many electronics products are coming into India, is because they will manufacture in India and they will create jobs, because the more factories that open up in India, there are more jobs, the economy grows, everyone starts, benefiting from it. And that's
and
the
you
whole
start getting
point.
it for much cheaper. All these products.
You do. But the point that the government is trying to make is we want to grow our economy. And so if you spend
Yes.
more over here and build over here, everyone in India gains, right? So India actually charges, up 52% for US products coming into India, which is huge. So reciprocal tariff in Trump's world is basically, if you do to me, I'm going to do to you. It's a tit for tat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he has been kind enough in his perspective to say we will only charge about half of what the country charges the US. So India charges US companies 52%. Trump has said we will only charge Indian companies 26%, right? Which is half of it. And that's kind of, the way he's kind of created the reciprocal tariff. So
Right.
tit for tat tariff. And if you look at that board, it's a very cool image. He has this one huge board that he's holding up showing each country how much they charge the US and how much he's going to charge them now, right? And if you see, most of it is literally half. His reciprocal tariff is half, except for Great Britain, where it's equal. I think it's 10% and 10% for the UK. So that's a reciprocal tariff.
Understood. Got it. And you were saying, so, we export a lot of medicines, pharmaceuticals to the US, but that is not going to get affected, right?
No. In fact, I think Trump has a soft spot for India. He's always
Well,
had
he
a soft
does.
spot for India.
He does call Modi his dear friend, right? A great friend.
Correct.
rather.
Correct. He has said that, he's a great friend of mine, and that imposing reciprocal tariffs on India is a very, very, very tough decision he had to make. But, if India is charging my companies, I need to charge Indian companies, which is, at one hand, it's fair. It's fair,
Sounds
I
fair.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also one needs to understand that, the US market till now has lived on a certain cost factor. And now with all of these tariffs coming in, the actual person who's going to pay a lot is the middle class families in the US. because all the products over there will start getting more expensive. Like I explained, that 100 rupee pen will now suddenly become 130 rupees rather than 100 rupees, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's the concern.
In fact, I was reading this article about how, each American household is going to have to pay some $5,000 more per year just, because of all these various tariffs. Things are going to get so much more expensive. And we spoke about this, right? From avocados to
Yep.
cars to, lots and lots of things. Thankfully, not medicines from India at this point, because that particular
Yeah.
category is exempt. But jewelry, pearls, semi-precious stones, precious metals like gold, silver, all of these things are going to get more expensive in the US. But I'm also hearing that, India is not the worst off, right? Because there are other countries
No.
like China has some insane, like 52% again there, or even higher.
No, I mean 34%, which is half of what China charges US companies. China charges US companies
okay.
about 67%. Yeah.
No, I
So-
think there were some previous tariffs that China also had. So the total
Oh, yeah,
comes
yeah,
to
yeah,
54%.
yeah. And in fact, that's also interesting from an India focused perspective, is that it's interesting that China has been slapped with so many high tariffs because it gives India a little bit of an advantage, because products like textiles, garments, like we talked about, pharmaceuticals, all of those, India will start selling more to the US now because it'll actually fundamentally become cheaper than China. The Chinese products in the US will start getting expensive, but the Indian products will probably be cheaper in some of these categories, right? So it's interesting. It could change a lot of the dynamics of global economies and global markets. And so with India especially, I think some of it has an advantage. Yes, there are more taxes on Indian companies for sure. But because other countries now have higher taxes, India may actually still benefit from it.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and watch though.
That's the positive spin on this entire story. Basically, it means that we can, gain out of all these tariffs. Yes, it sounds like a lot on paper, but then that would mean that we can export a lot, many more other things because our neighbors are getting taxed way more. Like, for example, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. Simple things like clothes, right? These countries manufacture clothes and export them into the US. Now, since they've been, slapped with massive tariffs, India has this as an opportunity that, hey, we'll start manufacturing and we'll start exporting because, we are comparatively better off, right? So a lot of things are going to get shaken around in the world economy.
But it's also interesting because, many of these countries, India, for example, is going to go back and see how they can reduce tariffs on US products. So it is literally what Trump wants, is to make sure everyone has a level playing field and no one is charged extra or penalized for bringing their products to another country. So India, for example, is going to go back and see how they can reduce tariffs on some US products. And if that kind of happens, then, it'll set a trend for many other countries. And the Trump administration is really using tariffs as a way to sort of equalize the market. That is, again, the positive spin on it. It is crazy what he's done. No one has done it so widely and so, aggressively. But I guess, you can see both sides of the story and figure it out and, make your own decision, I guess.
Yeah. And meanwhile, of course, like you were saying, India is continuing to have conversations with the US government. They're continuing to, there's something called a bilateral trade agreement. Basically, it just bilateral means when two countries are involved in a conversation. Trade agreement means they will decide terms and conditions and, under which they will work together and sell things to each other and buy things from each other. That's all it means. So India's trying to figure out, so like you said, we will buy more weapons from the US. Then if you buy more, whatever it is from India and, work out an agreement so everyone's happy. Those conversations are still going on. So we're going to find out, how it impacts us. And this is again, something we will start seeing in the long term. But right now, people are quite worried because the stock market has been, what is the stock market, Kiran? Quick brief.
Well, this is an episode on its own, Debbie.
It is. It is true.
Yeah, it is.
It's true.
So it's where we trade in stocks of companies. And what is a stock? Stock is how you own a portion of the company. But anyway, let's not go there. That's a different. Yeah, that's a complete episode. Yeah.
Let's not go there. No, let's put it like this. How are India's businesses reacting to this? How are people feeling about these tariffs? Are they scared? Are they being more
I think
careful
it's
with their
mixed.
money? Mhm.
I think it's mixed, right? Because as I said, some industries, it may be a competitive advantage over Chinese competitors or other country competitors. So some of them may see it as a competitive advantage and try and, take advantage of that. Some of the others may be a little bit more scared, like software services. If there is more and more taxes imposed on the entire IT services companies, I don't know too much about that. So we'll have to kind of go into a little bit more detail and dig a little bit deeper. But if, for example, IT services companies are charged a higher tax rate now, their prices go up. And India was always, one of the largest IT services hubs for the world.
Yep.
And so what does that do to the industry, right? So I think it is going to take a while for everyone to figure out what to do and what is going to happen.
Yeah. Cool. So let's wrap it up there because I think it's a lot. This was a tough topic for us to kind of break down. I hope it's kind of making sense. And if not, then please do write to us and tell us, we didn't get that, or we want you to simplify it further, and we will be happy to take your feedback on. Or if you think it was perfect, then let us know. Obviously, we like hearing good things, and we do hear a lot of good things from you. So thank you so much for doing that, sending in your messages. We're at that point in the episode where we announce our quiz question for this episode and announce our winner for the previous one. So do you want to announce the quiz question now?
Let's go with the quiz question. What is the quiz question for this week, Debbie?
Okay, so it's very simple. We're checking to see if you're paying attention. What is India's biggest export to the United States of America? We've mentioned this in the episode. Go back, listen to it. If you remember, let us know. Write to us at www.takarokids.com. That's our website. You can enter your answer there, or you can get an adult, to help you respond on our Instagram.
Yep. That is it. It's very easy. We've given you the answer. And if not, just go check online. It's very easy to find out as well. Or get your parents to check. But let's move on to the winner of last week's episode.
Yes. Now, for those of you who remember, we talked about Greenland and why Greenland is such a big deal nowadays. And the quiz question that we asked you was, which oceans surround Greenland? The correct answer?
And just on that, before you give the correct answer, we had many people responding back with not just the oceans, but there are so many seas and bays around Greenland. It was amazing to see everyone give answers which had like 6 or 7 different names. We asked for the oceans and there were 2, but there were tons of others. So thank you so much. That was amazing. But go on. What was the answer?
So the answer, which was very specific, the oceans that surround Greenland are the Arctic Ocean and the North Atlantic Ocean. And the correct answer was sent to us by Mia. Thank you so much. You are absolutely right. The Arctic Ocean and the North Atlantic Ocean are the 2 oceans that surround Greenland. And for this, your effort, we are sending you a gift voucher from Takaro Kids. Congratulations.
Woohoo! Congrats! And until next week, keep listening and have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye.